Welcome in, everyone, to another live preview show for the Hawks Eye podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Coots. And guys, I'm flying solo tonight. It's me and you guys in the chat, and we're going to break down everything Pittsburgh, Seattle coming up on Sunday. So before we get into that, don't forget, subscribe to the channel. I'm about 50 short of 1,000 subscribers, guys. So I appreciate everyone that's already in here, that's already subbed up to the channel. It means a lot. You guys have been great in the comments on the videos I've been producing, so I really appreciate it. So just make sure we continue to push this channel and get it out there to as many Seahawks fans as we can. And on top of that, let's have a lot of fun tonight. Let's keep the comments focused on the game. We'll come up with some different things for stat-wise that we'll discuss tonight. But other than that, guys, let's get into it right after this. All right, so let's talk about this matchup this weekend. We've got the Seahawks, we've got the Steelers. We're coming off a disappointing, obviously, week one loss, and the Steelers are kind of riding high off a pretty thrilling win over the New York Jets. This, for me, stakes-wise, is maybe even more important than the win potentially that we were trying to get versus San Francisco 49ers. And the reason I say that is teams that generally start 0-2 have only a 9% chance of making the playoffs. And especially with now the expanded playoff bracket that they've added the more teams into it, it really makes it tough. And the Seahawks can't afford to go 0-2 and try and make a late playoff push. You're going to be in a situation at that point where, you know, if the Cardinals and the Niners and the Rams are able to continue and win their games this week, you're really almost truly 4 games back of taking a division lead. And the reason I say that is you'd have to make up that difference plus get 2 games on them to get ahead. And it really, really worries me. The Steelers on the other side, they're going to want to try and stay as perfect. They're going to want to stay 2-0. They're in a really tough division there in the AFC North with Baltimore, who's, you know, obviously lost that thrilling game to Buffalo. You've got the Bengals, who barely snuck out their game versus Cleveland. So really, Pittsburgh right now wants to try and get as many games racked up here in their favor before they start really diving into that divisional bracket for themselves. The biggest thing, Steelers managed 24 points, you know, despite only 5 yards per play in some respects, like, you know, outside of, you know, their defense helping out and such. And the Seahawks, we only scored 13. We really have to get our offense on track in this game. The biggest thing for that, in my opinion, is they have to find some sort of balance. They've got to be able to run the ball. They've got to be able to establish the play action game, whether that's boots, whatever that may be, to get Sam out on the edge. And they have to get these tight ends involved. We heard about it all offseason, how Elijah Arroyo and AJ Barner were going to be massive parts of this offense. And in the passing game, it's something we've seen from this offense. And it's, you know, adjacent versions in San Francisco and LA with the Rams and even with Minnesota. And to see what was done on the weekend against the 49ers was pretty disconcerting in some respects in that regard. So that's kind of how we set up the game plan. Get some balance, get back to being 500. Don't drop to that 0-2, because it'll be a real hard way to kind of come back from that. And guys, I appreciate everyone in the comments right now getting in on that. So make sure you guys are, you know, if you're on Twitter and watching this, you guys can comment through the Twitter stream. It will come up into the chat here, and I'll be able to pull those up onto the show feed when we get to the Q&A part. But let's talk about inside the numbers here. And so there's a couple things I want to talk about. First off, let's talk about our defense. The defense for me, outside of obviously the mental lapses there at the end of the game, they pressured Brock Purdy on about 60% of his dropbacks, which is, you know, was one of the best pressure rates in the NFL in week one. Now, obviously, we didn't get home enough and get sacks, but that's still a real positive statistic to take out of that game, is we are able to affect the pocket and able to affect the quarterback. And in some respects, with Brock Purdy to Aaron Rodgers, I think Brock Purdy is a bit better of an athlete right now than Aaron Rodgers is at his point in his career. So some of those, you know, pressures might turn into sacks. Allowed only 5.3 yards per pass, but we gave up those key conversions late, which really, really killed us. Obviously, we all have heard throughout the week and discussed the Riq Woolen. Should he start? Should he not start? Well, obviously, with the Devin Witherspoon news that we got today about him being doubtful for the game, I think it's more than likely that Riq Woolen will be out there, and it explains why Shaquille Griffin now has been signed to the active roster to play that third spot, with Josh Jobe probably manning that number 2 corner spot. Now, on the flip side, the Steelers defense, this could be our run game's good get-right game because they gave up 182 yards and 6.1 yards per carry to the Jets. Now, I understand there's a caveat to that, which is Justin Fields. He made a big contribution in the run game. He's a running factor, so that helps with that. But I still think Seattle can get right. Highsmith's playing injured in this game. Yes, they have TJ Watt. Cameron Hayward is still trying to get back from basically not doing anything throughout training camp, which we've, seen in the past when guys miss, a good chunk of their training camp. It's difficult to step in and play week 1 and week 2 and be really effective. So this to me is an opportunity for Seattle. And I'm not expecting Seattle to run for 182 yards, but let's see Seattle be more consistent with that running game. Let's see Seattle actually commit to it and really, go and try and establish that in this game, because that's where you're going to get that boot and play action that we didn't see. Turnovers, Seahawks are even in that margin right now. We had the 2 interceptions and we had 2 fumbles, and the Steelers are a +1. So obviously for us, it's a big key to get back in that positive area. We're getting more turnovers than giving them up. Red zone efficiency, Steelers were 3 trips, 3 touchdowns. They were 100% last week, and Aaron Rodgers looked good. Like, can't take anything away from Aaron Rodgers in that game. He looked quite good. Us, on the other hand, 1 touchdown on 3 trips. That's 33%. That's not going to cut it in the NFL. Both teams had 4 penalties in week 1, so that's good. Our number's not too high. We just got to make sure they're not at critical points. Like when we're getting sacks on the quarterback, we don't have illegal contact calls downfield that extend drives. The biggest thing I think, that we got to look at is, can our defense put enough pressure on Aaron Rodgers to get him out of rhythm? And on the flip side, our red zone improvement needs to come out in this game with the running attack. We need to see that red zone improvement. Those are some of the things that I think are going to be massively key when we look at these numbers and we look back at it. That's where I really think for the Seahawks, we have to establish some of those things. And we got Dan in here already, guys. And I'm going to start throwing these in early. We may not just wait for the Q&A part. So Dan comes in. He goes, Seahawks 38, Steelers 12, 200 yards on the ground, 250 in the air, 3 sacks of Rodgers. Tariq gets an interception covering DK. DK gets a personal foul from his frustration. Out of all of that, Dan, I love the optimism. I absolutely love it. I think there's a good chance the last prediction you have there of DK getting a personal foul is probably the highest chance out of most of those numbers, just because I think, 200 yards on the ground, like over 450 yards of total offense, that's a pretty big thing for the Seahawks to kind of go from what they were last week to this week and have that big of a shift. I would love to see it. In a great world, that's what I'd love to see, but I'm not that optimistic myself. But the DK getting a personal foul, we do know that, players can get under DK's skin. And I think some guys, like a Kobe Bryant, maybe even it would have been nice to have Spoon out there because we know Spoon would have been able to do it. But I think there's a few guys that might be able to get under DK's skin. What else do we got in here? Let's just start this off quick. This is another one from Dan. This is a fair point. If the Jets can get 30, so can we. Yeah, I totally agree. There's no reason Seattle, like the Steelers defense, after watching the All-22 for myself, really diving into it, I haven't seen anything from the Steelers defense that I would say worries me or concerns me. Yes, TJ Watt's a very good player. Jalen Ramsey, he doesn't look like the same player he once was. Obviously, he's aged quite a bit significantly. He's still good. I just don't think he affects the game the same way he used to. Deshaun Elliott's out for them. That's a huge loss in some respects, and so is Joey Porter. So 2 of their top DBs, one's a nickel safety hybrid, the other's obviously one of the top corners. That's going to be something we should be able to take advantage of, and that should mean that our number 2 and 3rd options in this offensive system, passing-wise, should definitely be more of factors in this game going forward. Amy Holmes comes in. Love to see Amy in here. They're weak against zone runs, right? So Sharps may be big this week. Yes, I think it's interesting. If you guys saw my my all 22 breakdown show with Coach DC of all 22 films that I released yesterday, we talked about the running game at length and, you know, how he sees it versus how, you know, what maybe some people thought coming out of that 49ers game. I think there's a very big opportunity out here for both K9 and Charbonnet. I think the biggest thing for Seattle in a way, Amy, is yes, they're susceptible to the zone, but what you want to see from that is you want to get them over pursuing to the zone. And that's something I think Charbonnet can take advantage of is when we see these linebackers not start flowing because we're having success, is hitting that backside hole that or gap that'll open up backside on the zone concept and gash them there and see some more of the split zone and even some counters to, you know, over pursue and get these guys caught, especially Highsmith and TJ Watt as, you know, rush ends. We have to affect the edge. We have to do it whether it's in the run game, and we can't leave these guys unblocked. And as you guys probably saw in that video, me and Coach DC really went into depth about the last run play before the strip sack and just why certain aspects of the concept just didn't work. You left Nick Bosa, you know, unblocked. You had Ken Walker come in motion, and then kind of the mesh point got messed up between him and Sam Darnold. And in that situation, that's maybe where you see a Jaylen Milroe be a little bit more effective with his legs because now Bosa can't crash hard. He's got to respect it. Or you bring a tight end in and you change the formation. You still get the motion, but you put two tight ends there so you can still pull one into lead. But at the same time, you still have someone that can block Nick Bosa or at least get in his way enough that allows Ken Walker to get into the hole. It's things like that. But I would say, Amy, there's a good shot that Charbonnet has a pretty good week if they commit to giving him the ball enough. Like Charbonnet is not going to be as effective on 12 carries. Charbonnet is going to be effective on 20 to 25 touches of the ball. And if you make that, you know, 17 to 20 carries and 5 catches, then we're kind of in the ballpark of where Charbonnet starts to now affect the game. So those are it's definitely a big if. Definitely a big if. So we'll have to see if that actually comes to fruition this weekend, Amy. So let's talk about the trenches. You know, that's something that's going to be really key in this game. And, you know, some of the things I look at when I talk about this, and I think this may kind of be really interesting for some. So week 1 for Seattle, there were 26 rush attempts on roughly, you know, 50 to 70 plays. That's a run rate of 34.7. If we go back to an average, 3.2 yards per carry between Walker roughly had 2, Charbonnet had 3.9. The week 1 last year when we played Denver, the comparison, Seattle also had 37.2% run rate. So it's almost identical what our run rate was in both week 1s. One with Ryan Grubb, one with Clint Kubiak. And we kind of know how the rest of our season went after week 1 when it came to the run game. So I'm really hoping there is a very stern correction. And if that requires Mike McDonald to say to Clint Kubiak, kind of what Pete Carroll said to Brian Schottenheimer, and he did the same thing with Darrell Bevel of, we are going to run the football. We are going to establish the run and just run the ball. You might need to do that to get Clint into that mindset. I'm not saying that he isn't, but you can't be going through and doing the same thing last year as you did this year when it comes to run rate and seeing the same numbers and going, yeah, we've made some significant change, because it sure doesn't come across that way. The one thing I'll say is the O-line's pass protection last weekend, amongst what the national grouping is put out there about Seattle's O-line not being that good, they were actually, in my opinion, pretty good overall in protection of Sam Darnold. He was getting rid of the ball nice and quick. So those are some positives. When you look at the Steelers front, again, they gave up that 182 yards. Watt, however, had 2 sacks, 6 pressures. Highsmith had 1 sack, 4 pressures. So they remain disruptive. And so that's something, you know, you got to think that's 10 pressures and 3 sacks between 2 edge players. That's going to be a tall task for Abe Lucas going up against TJ Watt quite a bit. And the same for Charles Cross taking on Alex Highsmith. Like both of those guys, I think Highsmith is probably one of the most underrated edge players in the NFL. And, that's going to be a big, big part. And so the thing for Seattle is they cannot get one-dimensional. We can't see Sam Darnold a 92% drop back. That's not going to win this football game. And if a lot of us recall that one game that we had a few years ago back, I think it was 2021, after Russ injured his finger and we had Geno Smith go into the game in Pittsburgh. And the first half was a mess. We were trying to throw the ball. We were doing a whole bunch of different things, and we didn't really commit to the run. And it took Pete, even at the halftime kind of quick coach talk that he does with the reporter, to say we need to establish our run game. They came out and they ran the ball down Pittsburgh's throat. And we ended up losing on a strip sack, yes, and I get that that's a sore spot there. But what I'm saying is the run game is the key to controlling the game. And if we are going to turn into another pass-happy offense, we won't have the success we need to win in the NFL. And Sam Darnold won't be successful. Sam Darnold is great off of play action. His rate is one of the best in the NFL coming off of play action. The fact that we only called one play action play, and that one play action play went for 21 yards, should have been indicative of, okay, how's the rest of the game going to go? And if you don't run the ball consistently and you don't give that play action a chance to develop and the boots to develop off it, you really put your O-line in a situation where a guy like Nick Bosa, in that situation at the end of the game, knows, okay, I don't really have to worry about the boot. They're not going to do anything. They haven't done it all game. I know where Sam's roughly been sitting in this pocket. They've got X amount of yards to go tendency-wise. This is kind of the drop they're going to call. I can take Abe Lucas and do this bull rush this time, and I will take him and try and put him as close as I can to Sam, which is what Nick Bosa did at the end of the day. And that's where, when you start adding the boot and certain other concepts like that into your offense, now that D lineman can't go, okay, yeah, I know where he's going to be roughly every time. Oh, maybe they are going to pull a boot on this. And the other thing was the lack of under center. Like, we, as an offense in that game, played more out of gun than we did under center. And yes, we had a better under center rate than we did last year, but it wasn't enough to affect things. We still found ourselves in a lot of gun situations and a lot of 11 personnel. We were in 50% 11 personnel last Sunday, which is something we didn't think we were going to see a lot of as a fan base after the offseason of 12 and 21 personnel talk. Let's see. What else do we've got coming in here? So we got Ian in here. Steelers offensive line is weak, especially left tackle on the Steelers. You can attack that side the most. I agree. That's something they're going to have to do. They're going to have to get after it. And I think, it ties into a comment here from Amy as well about Chenna coming back and having the health of Chenna and seeing where he's at. I think Chenna is going to start out as a run defender first, Amy. I think they're going to limit his pass rushing and really get him kind of in on first down, second down. He'll be able to spill D-Law a bit. I really think your pass rush is really going to come from Mafe and Hall. That's where you're going to see that impact in this game. And both of them played quite well. Both of them had their way in some respects with Trent Williams last weekend. There was plays where Hall was driving him back and Mafe, like, they both looked rather impressive last week. So now we need to see that consistency carry over into this week. But I think you'll see Chen on first, second down, be that run edge setter that we like, have him and D-Law opposite each other. It'll help in that regard. I think the most interesting thing is going to be, obviously, it'll be who's going to play nickel. Are they going to put Shaq inside? Are they going to put Josh Jobe inside? Are they going to activate DeAnthony Bell and move him into that nickel spot for this weekend if Spoon can't play, which is all signs pointing to he won't be? Because that's going to affect the box, and it's going to affect how you blitz and how you can create issues for this Pittsburgh Steelers offensive line. That's going to be pretty critical in this game, I think, in a lot of ways. So we'll have to see how that kind of all shapes up. Let's go into the next part of this show here, and let's talk about the aerial attack. Aerial attack versus air defense. And Pittsburgh Steelers, for Aaron Rodgers being as old as he is, he was 19 of 28, so roughly same passing numbers to an extent as Sam Darnold when it comes to attempts and completions. 207 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like, he killed the Jets on play action. He was 8 of 10 for 71 yards and 3 TDs off of play action. All of his touchdown passes came off of a play action concept. And Aaron Rodgers, in my opinion, as much as you may love him, you may hate him, he, in my opinion, is probably the best play action quarterback of this generation. And it's not even close. He is so good at making it look the exact same as when he hands the ball off. And you know what? That's something Seattle's going to have to be ready for, because we haven't proven that we can still stop play action. Like even the 49ers with Brock Purdy and even George Kittle being out of the game, we're still able to get good chunk plays on us through the play action. The Steelers offense, they played a lot of 12. They were in 53% of the time. They were in 12 personnel. It made things more difficult, I think, on the Jets, because, most of the time we've seen an Aaron Rodgers offense out there, they're in 11. They might be in, 10 personnel in some points with no tight ends on the field. And I think it was really interesting to see the fact that they ran a lot of 12. And Aaron, I think, bought into what Arthur Smith at this point is selling him, because it seems to have worked. So that's going to be one thing, is how does Seattle's defense now handle that, where Aaron Rodgers is going to have play action. They can run the ball. We know Pittsburgh's been able to be a team that can somewhat run the ball and keep you honest. So those are some things I think we'll have to look for. And this is where that pressure is going to be key. We have to get home on Aaron Rodgers. If we don't get home on Aaron Rodgers, we're going to have a long day, I think, in some respects, with the injuries we now have to the secondary and the questionable play out at the one corner spot with Reek, if Reek can bounce back. So in the flip side of this, though, if you look at Seattle's pass game, we got to find some other guys that can catch this ball. I'm not saying that the guys on our team can. I'm not saying that when I say find other guys. Like, we have to find those other guys on the field and get them the ball. JSN had 124 yards. Myself and Dan Viens did a Hawks film lab talking about the concepts and JSN, and was Sam forcing it? Was he not really looking? And no, a lot of the time JSN got open. There were some where, yes, Sam probably needed to look to a different area, but either there was some pressure or something and he got rid of the ball quickly. You look at it, it's 124 yards for JSN, and no other receiver top 40 yards on the entire rest of the Seahawks group. That's not going to cut it in the NFL. Cooper Kupp needs to be involved. Torrey Horton needs to be involved. If you take a shot play to Torrey Horton at least once in the game and let the team know that we've got a guy that can go over the top, it backs those safeties off. They can't crash down in the box. And if you watch the run game video, that's one thing Coach DC brought up, was how aggressive the 49ers safeties and corners were, because they didn't have that threat of the play action and a shot play happening. They just came down like crazy into run fits. You start taking a shot play every now and then off of the play action, now those safeties back up an extra 2 steps. They take their read step before they come flying down into the hole and try and meet the running back there. That's how it all works together. And that's where last week was so frustrating to watch, as as an experienced OC as Kubiak is, though, that to me was very Ryan Grubbish. It was very like a guy that has never done it before. Just the way the sequencing was so off and everything, it frustrated me in so many ways. And then on Seattle's defensive side, we held San Francisco to 207 passing yards. We had some moment lapses, but the thing I look at is, if Julian Love plays, which it sounds like he's playing, you got him and Bryant back there. You got Josh Jobe, who's playing really well. And I think by the midway point of the season, Josh Jobe will be corner number 2. And Reek Woolen will be 3, or even maybe potentially 4, as depending on how Shaquille plays. But I think Jobe and Witherspoon are going to be your 2 outside corners by the halfway point of the season. We just can't give up. We can't give up bad plays and stuff that we should have in a lockdown situation. And that was what was so frustrating, was a lot of the time we had the Niners, and it was Purdy getting out on the edge and getting a little extra time, and then we're grabbing at guys and we're doing stuff like, if we just do our job, we get pressure, we get home. We saw what happened last year with Aaron Rodgers and Jets. There were a lot of problems there for him trying to get rid of the ball when we were creating pressure. We got to get him out of his tempo. So what have we seen in the comments here? Let's see here. TR Price, or Pierce, sorry. I'd like to see Horton get 100. I would too. That'd be really impressive to see Torrey Horton get 100. Let's see. What else we got? Brian comes in talking with Amy in the chat. He goes, wouldn't mind to even see 22. I agree. And that's the thing too, that's, really interesting. And this is something I think, for football fans, it's definitely something to look at when you guys think of the personnel sets. And some of you may know this and some of you won't. So I'm just going to kind of go over it just for, people that may not. So when you hear the terms 22, 12, 13, 31, what you're looking at is the first digit there is how many backs are on the field, and the second digit is how many tight ends are on the field. And so you can mix and match that by your personnel. So one thing to look at for Seattle is they may come out in what looks like 21 personnel with Robbie Oots and Charbonnet and, say, AJ Barner on the field. But they may also shift Robbie Oots now to the left side, say if Barner's on the right, and he may line up as an inline tight end and be on the line. And now you're in 12 personnel because Robbie Oots gives you that flexibility. So look at the players and think of how they move around. Like, that's where, like, sometimes we can see, like, you know, you could be in 12 personnel or even 11 personnel, but because Elijah Arroyo is such a weapon as a receiver, you may see him split out wide. And really, it's like, are they actually in 12 personnel? But Elijah Arroyo's just bumped outside. JSN's in the slot. Cup's on the other side, and Barner's lined up as the true tight end. Well, for a defense, they're going to be going, well, this is 11 oh, wait, no, maybe this is 12 personnel, but we don't know how to adjust to it. So that's how the numbering system works on offense when we talk about the personnel side. Is first digit's always the number of running backs on the field. Second digit is the number of tight ends on the field. And for me as a coach, I love messing with that on defenses all the time. I'll have certain personnel groups with names, and it'll look like one thing, but really we're able to do this because this guy is this chess piece for us, and he gives us this advantage. He may be a tight end 75% of the time, but in certain sets, I may put him out wide and get him matched up on a small corner and just pick on that matchup all day until the defense wants to take someone over there to actually stop it. So, you know, that's the thing of the personnel setting. So when you guys hear those terms being thrown out by Greg Olson, all those guys, now you guys have a little bit of an idea of where that terminology is coming from. So let's see what else. Let's go with this. Okay, player spotlight. So guys I've got on the Hawks to watch. Obviously, JSN's one. We want to see if he can duplicate this, clean up the turnovers, but can he duplicate or get close to what he did? Can he be another factor in this passing game? The next two guys to me on the spotlight, we've got to see stuff out of Elijah Arroyo and AJ Barner. Like, they, you know, the Jets had 52 yards to Conklin, who's nowhere near the tight end that either one of them is, against the Steelers. And part of that is the 3-4 scheme the Steelers like to deploy. You can get some mismatches, especially with Deshaun Elliott being out. TJ Watt doesn't play in space very well. Neither does Highsmith. So if you can start running that boot and running those leaks with Arroyo underneath the, you know, the edge defender on the backside and slip him out into the flat and just have that as your dump check for Sam Darnold, those will make some serious problems for that Pittsburgh defense, because now they might have to get out of that 3-4 to an extent. They might have to shift how they want to align it just to deal with the tight ends being a problem. So that's where, for me, like, I want to see Elijah Arroyo and AJ Barner start actually becoming factors in this offense. And that's something that definitely Clint Kubiak, I think, must be focused on for this week, is to get them involved. And then the other person is DeMarcus Lawrence. Like, I think DeMarcus Lawrence could dominate Jones in this game. Jones allowed 4 pressures in week 1 alone. We saw that D-Law has stuff in the tank because he was moving like the offensive tackles around on the 49ers. DeMarcus Lawrence I could put it out there that DeMarcus Lawrence might have a multi-sack game. He might get 2.5, 3 sacks maybe if he can really dominate and get after Rodgers quickly on those early downs. Because we do not know that Rodgers will check out and throw the ball. I think there's a chance that, you know, maybe, you know, Lawrence, he's my guy to look at, but I think Hall and Mafe, they could all be factors, and they need to be factors in this game. If we flip this, though, kind of, and this will be a segment all the time, guys, all these ones we've gone through, every pregame show, these will be the segments, and it'll just be the other teams that we fill into these holes. The opponent breakdown. We got to know our enemy, right? We got to know who we're going up against, who have been the factor players for that team. And so, you know, one, Jaylen Warren, like, he actually had a pretty good game for the Steelers last week. 78 total yards, average 4.1 yards per carry. Last season, he's a bit of a scat back. He's got some, you know, get up and go. They have Kenneth Gainwell as well. He played more of the pass catching role for them. He had, you know, 3 catches for 24 yards versus the Jets. They like to use him in the screen game. So that's going to be 2 guys. The running backs for the Steelers definitely had, you know, big impact plays at different points in that game. So we can't look at it and go, okay, they don't have Najee Harris, so the running back room's kind of eh. No, the running back room's still effective, and Arthur Smith has always been known to really produce a good running game. So that's something we're going to have to keep an eye on. Calvin or Austin the third, 47 yards and a touchdown. He is their vertical threat guy. They'll line him up in the slot. They'll line him up out wide. He's a short, shiftier receiver, but he definitely has become someone Rodgers likes to get the ball to. Obviously, there's DK, so we know we're going to obviously see some impact with DK, but we know what DK's limitations are as Seahawk fans. Their tight ends, Washington and Freiermuth, 7 targets, 42 yards. They love, and I cannot stress this enough, you will see multiple 12 personnel sets, even 13 personnel sets in the red zone from the Steelers. They love their tight ends in the red zone. They love to feature them in the pass game in the red zone. And so that's something that we're going to have to be as, Seahawk fans. That's going to mean Ernest Jones, Tyrese Knight, these linebackers are going to have to get hands-on with these guys, reroute them, take that timing away from Rodgers to get the ball out, and really be physical with these guys. This is going to be, and that's the thing that, again, from week 1, physical divisional game, to now playing an AFC North team, which we all know that division itself is physical in its own right. This is going to really test that toughness level of the Seahawks team, because this isn't like you're going to go play, in a week here, the New Orleans Saints, where we're kind of going, okay, the New Orleans Saints aren't in the same physicality realm as the Steelers and the 49ers. There's going to be 2 weeks of banging football constantly and really hearing those shoulder pads smack around. So it's going to be tough on these guys. And then obviously defensively, Watt and Highsmith, 3 sacks, 10 pressures. And now you got Jabril Peppers, who's probably going to play some for Deshaun Elliott here in that kind of third safety role. He's somebody, I know he's a good player, but he's somebody I would attack. He's not going to be as comfortable in the system. His communication, as much as when he's out there, he's a guy, if I'm Sam Darnold, I'm trying to see what sub packages they're bringing Jabril Peppers in on and who's he getting lined up over, because I want to see if I can take advantage of that and get him matched up on a Cooper Kupp in the slot or a JSN and get those quick stick routes and option routes on him, because he's not going to be as comfortable playing with the Steelers. So that's somebody to kind of circle when you're watching the game and go, okay, are they attacking Jabril Peppers? Because they should as an offense, and Clint Kubiak should know that. I like this from Sean. Big Cat is going to feast on Rodgers again. I'd love it. I'd love another pick 6 from Leo. That would be phenomenal. Those are definitely some of the things, Amy, as she called it, she goes, another thick 6, 100%. I definitely would love to see something. What else do we got in here from the chat? I just want to kind of have a look, make sure I'm not missing anything. And I'll get to all these at the end, guys, as well. We'll get through a good Q&A portion tonight. All right, so before we get to that Q&A, because I really want to hear from you guys and how you're feeling about this game, I got my 3 keys to victory, and it's something that I normally do as a sub-segment show, something I did last week for the 49ers game, a little 15-minute show, comes out Saturday morning, but I figured because this preview show and pregame show is so close to the game being on Sunday, that I'm just going to do my 3 keys to victory right now for you guys. And I want to know what your guys' 3 keys to the victories are for the Seahawks this Sunday. So first one up, and I'll take the banner down so it doesn't get in the way of it. First one up, guys, for me is, like I said earlier, it's winning the edge. And that's something that we have to win, is the edge war. Because if we don't win that edge war, we're going to be in trouble on the weekend. So the Steelers defense is built around their pass rushing monsters. It's built around Watt and Highsmith. Week 1, obviously 2 sacks, 6 pressures. They've got their 3 and 10. That's really good production for week 1. And that's with Highsmith getting banged up. Seattle did give up quite a bit of pressures. They claim that they gave up 24 pressures. I didn't see 24 pressures in my opinion, but that's what the NFL statistics are claiming, which is the second most in week 1. To neutralize the edge rush, Seattle must attack where the rushers aren't. Run counters, draws, misdirection plays at the edges. Force Watt and Highsmith to think instead of react. And that's key, especially in this 3-4 system. If you get them thinking there's going to be a tight end coming across and picking them off when they want to squeeze down on the run, or is it a jet play to JSN or Torrey Horton? Any of those kind of things. You start getting these guys to think, their get-off starts getting slower and slower throughout the game. along with the physicality of just having to be involved in all the run fits. The last part of that is, I'll take that banner off because it's bugging me there. Pittsburgh gave up 182 yards, 6.1 yards per carry to the Jets last week. They proved that they can be gashed against a downhill and on cutbacks. That's what the Jets love to do. They love to run the zone cutback, and they loved running just straight downhill. And that's the thing about Charbonnet and Walker. I know a lot of people thought Walker would fit in this outside zone scheme. And there's certain things in it where Walker can fit in it. Walker is much better when you tell him this is the hole, hit that hole going 100 miles an hour. That's what he's better at. And it's the honest truth. You look at some of his better runs in the San Francisco game were not in the zone. They were straight off the guard into the 4 or the 3 hole, power type, inside gap power run, stuff like that they mix in. Like, as much as we say this is a wide zone scheme, it is a wide zone scheme with principles, but it also involves counters and gap pulls and stuff like that, because you can't just purely be a wide zone team. You have to have an array of different runs to kind of go to when we're going outside zone, and now we're coming back with a counter that looks like outside zone, but we're pulling our play side guard and tight end back the other way and getting you over pursuing and sealing and getting the kick out block and running it like we did against Kansas City with Zach Charbonnet. So those are the key, and that's key one. Win the edge war. We have to win that edge war. Key two, and this is something I think a lot of you guys will appreciate, it's boots and balance. Sam was efficient but conservative in week 1. He was 16-23 for 150 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But the lack of the play action limited Seattle's ability to stretch the defense. And that's why, he was getting the ball out quick, but because he was getting it out so quick, nothing deep down the field could really develop except for a couple different times. If you get the play action, the boot game going, now you're going to be able to get those shots, those double moves, that post corner with a Torrey Horton where, he's been running that post and that over out all game. And now that corner and safety are kind of like, yeah, sure, you're going to do something else. Now Torrey goes in and he boots back out with Sam coming the other way, and he turns out and runs to the high flag corner, and Sam can just lay that out there for him. That's how you start taking advantage in the play action game. That's where you get your deep shots. Don't rely on straight drop back to get your deep shots. Use your play action to get your deep shots. You compare those numbers to Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh, 8 for 10, 71 yards, 3 touchdowns off of play action in week 1. Literally take that blueprint. If that were the number set that Sam put up last week, 8 for 10, 71 yards and 3 touchdowns, Seattle wins that football game. And that's not a lot if you think about, Rodgers only threw the ball 29 times. Like, that's not a lot to say, 10 of those throws are going to come out of play action. The other ones can be dropped back in the screen and whatnot, but get 10 to 12 throws out of the play action game this week. That should be the number. That's a sweet number for Clint Kubiak. That should be where that number should kind of aim for. Play action bootlegs slow down the elite pass rushers as well. It widens the passing lanes and gives the QB a safe half field read. So again, slow down Highsmith and TJ Watt. Don't let them tee off and know exactly where Sam's going to be in that pocket. Move him around, move the pocket. And we've heard Mike McDonald even say that. They need to move the pocket. They need to do some of those things. So that's the other part. And then the last point in this boots and ballast part for key to the game, if Seattle can push its run rate above that 34.7, which was, the 26 run plays, it'll force the Steelers linebackers and safeties to step forward, opening the middle field windows where Sam was 4 for 4 in the game against the 49ers without the play action. You start giving him that, you're going to see, and that was within, 5 to 10 yards he was hitting that. You might see that 10 to 15 yard range kick up now when he's able to hit those, because those safeties are now having to creep up, and then you take that shot play, and then you got these safeties going back and forth, and they won't be comfortable all game. So that's where this boots and balance really is going to be key too for me. Get Sam on the move, let him use his legs a little bit, extend that pocket. And then number 3 here, tight ends equals chain movers. We've got good tight ends in Seattle. Seattle's tight ends are young but vital. Barner, inline strength. Elijah Arroyo is your receiving threat. They got to start becoming his security blanket to go to, especially when you're in a 12 personnel. Yes, Cooper Kupp's a factor. I'm not saying he can't be a security blanket too, but use these guys. We saw what Barner did last year at points for Geno Smith. Elijah Arroyo, someone we're all super excited about. Stretch that seam, be that middle of the field kind of guy. Get these guys involved in your boot packages. Get them chipping and then getting out to the flats. Those things are going to frustrate TJ Watt and Highsmith. And it's going to be things where it's a nice, simple pass. You throw for 5 yards. It could turn into a 12-yard game because there's nobody in the flat with them. That's how this all kind of plays off one to the other. Last week, Pittsburgh gave up 52 yards to the tight ends, showing a soft spot against tight end coverage. Like, take advantage of it. That should be something. And we know that the Steelers are obviously going to be there saying, hey, we got to be better against this. Okay, that was one tight end last week in Tyler Conklin that did that. We have 2 very good tight ends, and we have a fullback that used to be a tight end in Robbie Oots, who you can also use in this situation and leak out into the flats. You know, with JSN carrying the load at wide receiver, 124 yards in week 1, little help elsewhere, you got to find a way to diversify that targeting to the tight ends on short to intermediate routes. Like, let JSN be the focal point, and you can have teams bracket him, but now you use these guys to open up room for JSN to get back and get some single coverage, move JSN around, use these guys, make teams go, crap, okay, we've got to defend the entire field in the passing game. We can't just solely focus on where JSN's going to be. And the last part, tight end usage also keeps your defense in base looks. So, again, they can't get into certain packages because Elijah Royal's a mismatch on nickel corner because of his size and speed. Barner can beat up nickel corners. Okay, we got to stay in our base look. Well, great, cool. They're also more athletic than most linebackers. So, if Arroyo can work those seams and Barner controls the edge, Seattle's offense in a lot of ways can become unpredictable if you run the ball. So, those, everyone, are my 3 keys for the Seattle Seahawks to win this game. Win the edge war, get the balance in the boot and run game, and then get your tight ends involved in the passing game to be your chain movers. And I think if they can get those 3 things going in the right direction this Sunday, Seattle's got a very good chance of winning that football game. So before I give you guys my score prediction and whatnot, let's really get into what I'm going to start calling the 12's Q&A Blitz. So this is where I'm going to just sit, go through the comments with you guys, answer any of your questions, anything you guys have thought about this entire show. I appreciate the 91 of you that are in here on a Friday night, and I know most people probably have better things to do on their Friday night, so I appreciate all of you guys being in here. So yeah, let's get this started with the Q&A portion here. And I'll go back up to the top here and kind of work my way down. I got a few of these starred, so I'll bring up Dan's right off the top here. He goes, Kubiak just need to get his feet wet. It's going to be a big week against the Steelers. I sure hope so. I'm kind of worried that we're saying Kubiak had to get his feet wet when he's been an offensive coordinator as fresh as last season and what they did those first couple weeks in New Orleans. But I really hope you're right, Dan, that he can get his feet wet and now he's going to be comfortable and now he gets into a groove with his play calling. So those are going to be some key things. Robert, I appreciate the $20 donation, man. Really appreciate that. He goes, can we get right, or is this what is to expect from this offensive play calling? No, Robert, I think they can get right. I really do. I think there were a few things that worked against the Seahawks week 1. It was a divisional game. Your division opponents always know you well. You've got an offensive coordinator who is very familiar with that staff and with Robert Saleh. And there were some things that Robert Saleh did in this game that were very much cues on Seattle plays, especially in the run game. And the way Fred Warner played some things and the way that they knew certain things were coming, I think it's going to challenge Clint Kubiak to be a little bit more creative in how he tries to get certain things, later on in the year against the 49ers. But I do think going forward, there's a very good chance that this, is going to get better and not worse for Seattle. So again, appreciate the donation. What else do we got in here just to get through some of these? Oh, Dogzilla in the chat. Always appreciate you being in here. Old School's in here. Great to see all you guys in here. Appreciate it. Let's see. Sean comes in. He goes, the defense actually did pretty well considering how long they were on the field last week. Yeah, again, time of possession. Always, if you guys want to see the outcome of a game, if you're not able to watch it, you can generally tell how that's going to turn out with the time of possession and third down conversion rate. That will usually give you the best idea of how that game is going to turn out. Just because if you're not on the field on offense, you're going to run into some problems. What else do we got in here? Dan comes back with Cross will nail it this week. Lucas will also come up big to prove his worth, his extension. I never looked at that. Like, I know there were a lot of people going, oh, well, you just paid Abe Lucas, and then he gets shoved back by Nick Bosa. Like, it was like kind of this, some people were making this like off comment about it. And I'm like, we're talking about probably the best power rusher in the NFL. And Abe Lucas, yes, he is, being paid as one of the better right tackles. And I think at the end of the day, we're going to look at this contract in a few years and go, great, we're getting top 10 production from a right tackle at the cost of a top, 20 to 15 contract, which is phenomenal. Nick Bosa is going to make plays. That to me was more scheme and predictability by the offensive scheme than it was necessarily Abe Lucas. He had a bad rep, but one bad rep out of an entire game, maybe two. I'll take that considering what we've had for pass pro in Seattle for the last decade, really, has been just atrocious, where we're sitting there going, okay, there's been 10 horrible reps by our entire offensive line throughout this game. So, but I agree. I think they're both going to do well this week, Dan. What do we got in here? Alpha comes in and goes, Jets got barely any pressure all game and still sacked Rodgers 4 times. I could see us getting to Rodgers 6 or 7. Agreed. Like, the Jets' defensive pass rush was nothing to write home about. I could totally see a situation, where we do create a lot of pressure, and especially with Mike Macdonald's simulation pressures that he likes to do, where they still bring 4, but you don't know which 4 are coming. We saw that last year when Leo got his, lovely pick 6, his thick 6, as Amy so greatly put in the chat. Where are we here? Here comes Brian. I comment with Johnny here. Yeah, if we play with the number of backs and tight ends, you can play with a lot of preset motion. Linemen's really good defense, a lot of to process. Yeah, and that's the thing I did like. There was quite a bit of motion. The thing I think we should really be interested in this week too, everyone, is what's the factor of Bobo and Derek Young being back? And the reason I say that is I think Seattle got caught with both of them being out in a situation where, okay, we know JSN's not the same level of a blocking receiver as Cooper Kupp. We know Torrey Horton really isn't the same level as a blocking receiver. So Cody White, to an extent, can block, but I don't know if Cody White's the best blocking receiver. And so when you look at that and you go, okay, your 2 best blocking receivers outside of Cooper Kupp are now injured in Derek Young and Jake Bobo. I think there might have been some conversations that went along there in that offensive prep room going into that game going, okay, we can't do some of our packages we want to because Bobo's not in there. We can't have both Bobo and Kupp on the field because Bobo's out or Young's out. Yeah, we might have to go into more 11 personnel here because of the fact that it might give us an advantage at some point. And I think it potentially led to the higher drop back numbers again, because the thing Jake Bobo has done so well in his career is, again, he's great at doing that slot, reduce, condense, chip the end, leak out. He does a lot of the same roles as a tight end. He's obviously not the same body size, but he can do a lot of the same things. And so I think that's where you're seeing Seattle kind of be like, oh crap, we didn't have the right personnel entirely because of injury. So it'll be interesting with Young and Bobo back, how that changes this week. I think will be something to kind of keep an eye on when they come out in the offense for the first couple of drives. What else we got in here? Robert comes back in. Sack Rodgers 4 times with high pressure rate, balanced offensive play calling, making Steelers play from behind. Again, that's a big thing. Ian Victor, run the ball, convert third down, sustain drives, play physical defense, honorable mention, be disciplined, and don't commit dumb penalties. Yeah, the dumb penalties one is going to be a key thing that we're going to have to make sure that we kind of stay on top of. The one thing I'll say is I remember the years where we were committing like almost double-digit penalties, and it was just like, oh, okay, how many drives are we going to extend this game against this team? And, we had some crucial ones. The thing for me that, was encouraging about the defense I'll mention that I didn't earlier is we got some interceptions. We got some turnovers. And that was something last year that we struggled with, was getting those turnovers, getting that from the other team. And so it was good to see Josh Jobe and Ernest Jones get that to start the season. And obviously we gave him back with those fumbles. But that's one thing I want to see Seattle have a better screen game in this game. And I still hate, and I hate it, and no one will change my mind. The stupid roll left, throw back right screen is so useless unless you have a legitimate mobile threat quarterback that if you don't respect it, he can take it and go around the corner. And I love Sam, but that is not Sam's game. And when you're going to do that, fine, then get guys out into the pattern on the front side of the concept so defense actually believes it's more of a sprint out than it is a throwback, because nobody believed that Sam was doing anything with that ball other than turning around and throwing it back to JSN. That was such a poorly designed concept on that play. That drove me absolutely nuts. Scott Holmes in there. He goes, I fully agree. Run the damn football. Agreed. They need to. Let's see. A lot of pound the rock. Obviously, Oots is going to be, that's one guy that I think is definitely going to be key. What else do we got in here? Lou comes in. Need to see some more under center and play action from the Hawks. Move Darnold around. Use the tight ends. Totally agree. Totally agree. It's my key to the game. It's my second key to the game this week. They have to do that. If they don't, they're going to struggle. What do we got? We got Brian in here. Goes, yeah, I'm kind of the noob here. There's no such thing as a noob here, Brian. Usually on Brandon's channel, but you came up and I was interested to see how you're viewing the next game. Appreciate you coming over, man, and having a look here. Yeah, no, I think there's a good chance Seattle can play and win this game. They just have to, like we've talked about, we have to get after Rodgers. We have to run the ball, and we have to develop play action. Like, those are the things that are going to give us the best chance. It'll be those type of things that'll make the difference in this game. If we fail at some of those are going to be, something that's going to cause us a lot of problems throughout the season, not just this week. Alpha comes back in with the Steelers were one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year against zone plays. Conversely, they were elite against gap runs. Need to see more zone and play action. Agreed. Like, you need to still run the gap, but you need to use the gap as more of a balancing out factor is what I would say is. And that's where I'm going to be really interested to see how they use Charbonnet and how they use Ken Walker and what that rotation looks like, because I don't know if anyone else felt this way. This is how I felt. I felt the rotational usage of both of them was so off in game one. It didn't make sense. There were points where Charbonnet was starting to get in a groove, and then all of a sudden you're yanking him out and throwing Ken Walker in there. And then Ken's almost getting in a groove. Okay, now we're going to throw Charbonnet in. Like, if you got a guy that's starting to get yards and the defense is struggling to bring him down, just leave him in. If that means Charbonnet gets a full drive down the field, then Charbonnet gets a full drive down the field and you score a touchdown, no one's going to care. But if you keep playing this, Russian roulette, excuse me, with the running backs on who's in and who's out, your offense gets stuck out of sync. And then teams might start to figure out, oh, well, when Ken's in the game, it's only gap calls, or when Sharp's in the game, it's only zone calls. And they only have these boots off of this, and they have this play action off a gap. Like, you don't want to get into that predictable state like we were last year where, Griffin Sturgeon looks and goes, and I look and we go, hey, we play action to the left when we're going to throw. Or we fake it, or we act like we're going to run left when we're going to play action off of it instead of the right. Like, the fact that we could sit there and pick that up, like NFL defenses can pick that up. So the more you can get some sort of smooth, consistent routine, and it may come to a point where Seattle has to make a decision on who the running back one is. Currently, right now, it's like 1A and 1B, and it may have to be truly a 1 and 2 situation. And if that means Charbonnet ends up being your guy, great. And K9 ends up being your change of pace, awesome. But you got to sometimes, if you can't figure out how to rotate them properly, then you got to start making a decision. Appreciate this from you, Johnny, and everyone that's here. You guys have been great supporters of the show, and I really appreciate it. Let's see, where else are we? All right. Johnny comes back, and what happened to the days of letting a running back get into a flow 20 or 30 carries? The spread air raid offense, Johnny, is what came in, and the read option is what came into that factor in a lot of ways. And running backs getting worn down over time, and those are kind of the things. Like, a lot of it too is just what teams want to do now. They want to distribute and make teams be more concerned about more players coming in sub packages, and sometimes it bites you in the rear end because you don't really get good at anything. And that's, I'm of the mindset as an offensive coordinator myself, I like to have a true running back who's my guy that can do majority of everything. And then I like to have my change of pace guy that when I throw him in the game, I've, run zone, inside zone, outside zone, inside zone, outside zone. And then I put this guy in and I run a couple, my change of pace, going outside zone, toss. And then we come back with a counter and he's got a little bit more get up and go. And boom, he takes that counter for 60 yards because the defense is gassed having to tackle the main back majority of the time. But I like all of my backs to have similar skill sets where they have a little thing that makes them a little bit different than the other, but not so much that it's drastically different and limits you in some respects to when you can put them in or out of the game. Let's see. Lou comes in with run the rock and use the tight ends. We only have 6 tight ends on the roster. Why invest in tight ends and not use them? I'm baffled. I got no answer for you on that one, Lou. I, again, would have loved to have seen the tight end usage be more apparent in the last game, and I think it will be in this game. I really do believe if you look at the frustration of Mike Macdonald losing that game, it's very, very telling how frustrated he was because they should have won that game. It wasn't like the 49ers were that much more talented than they were. And it was just them shooting themselves in the foot throughout the game at key moments that cost them that game. And whether that's scheme, whether that was, just bad coaching decisions. Like the 4th and 1, I still argue to this point, and this is a point I made on a couple shows that I've recorded this week. The Jaylen Milroe decision to bring him in randomly there on I think it was the second or third drive of the game. Why? There was no need for it. There was no need to bring in Jaylen Milroe at any point. I was of the mindset I wouldn't have, even if I had been Mike Macdonald, I wouldn't have dressed Jaylen Milroe. You don't know how to use him yet against an NFL team. You haven't seen enough game film of teams and how they respond in certain situations where you can go, yes, that's how we're going to use Jaylen Milroe is in these certain situations with this sub package. This will cause this team fits. You don't because it's week 1. And if you were going to dress him and use him, the prime opportunity was that 4th and 1. Put him on the field and make them have to decide, okay, are we really going to let Jaylen Milroe get out on the edge on us? Put Charbonnet and Oots in the game as well, and you could run the read power or QB power and see, okay, can San Francisco guard this? Are they going to be able? That's when you use Jaylen Milroe. You put the pressure on that situation. Guess what? San Francisco may have burned a timeout, and they may have been freaked out about it. Well, now that timeout that they just burned bites them in the ass later on in the game when they may need it when they're going down the field. But that's where I would have used Jaylen Milroe. Put the pressure on the 49ers to, in that critical moment, respond and be like, okay, how are we going to fit this? Because he has such a different skill set than Sam Darnold. He is now the running threat there. Now we have 3 running threats in the backfield in Oots, Charbonnet or Walker, and Milroe. Or have Milroe and Walker and Charbonnet out there. I don't care how you do it, but that's where you use Jaylen Milroe and his skill set currently as it stands in the NFL with his elite athleticism. That's where you put pressure on a defense, not second down in the middle of the first quarter on your 3rd drive and you run a orbit motion out with your running back to a swing pass and then a QB draw. Like if I'm the San Francisco 49ers, okay, cool. So you get 5 yards on this play and then you take Jaylen Milroe out of the game. You could have got the same 5 yards on a pass or a run to Walker. Like it didn't have the impact. And if you're going to use him, he needs to be making an impact in some way. So that's kind of where, I look at it in some respects and, go from there. And then WD Ford, always good to see you in here, man. Want to see one guy and a 3rd and long guy. Brian, I'm all about shortening the game and lots of play action. Yep, I agree. Oh, we got Dennis in here. Appreciate that, Dennis. I'm worried about the Hawks since when we have injuries or are there key? I don't like as much as I love Spoon and Eamon Worry. I think Eamon Worry's still a wild card. I don't, and what was concerning is how much Mike Macdonald clearly built the defensive scheme around him in game 1 to the point where when he got injured, it seemed like they didn't really know how to do what they wanted to do with Tayakata, who's not a box safety. He's more of a deep safety. So that was concerning, Dennis. The other part of that, like Spoon, Spoon factor is going to be huge because Spoon, I think, is obviously a much better player at this current point. I think if they bring up D'Anthony Bell, which I expect them to do, I think that limits the nickel damage of not having Eamon Warry and Witherspoon there, because Bell did play there quite a bit in the preseason and even in training camp and looked quite good. So I think Bell limits that. It's still not great, but I think the keys, like I said, the key is going to be more on the offense. I think the defense will be fine. Yeah, they may give up a play here or there, but I think the defense overall will be okay and still be able to operate because the majority of your defense is there. 85% of that defense is still intact. The key, the thing that would have made me more concerned, honestly, is if Julian Love had missed this game with Spoon. That would have worried me because I'm going, okay, now we got Tayakata back there and D'Anthony Bell is going to have to step in for Eamon Warry and Kobe Bryant. Like, that would have been like, oh boy. Now I'm just waiting for DK to keep running deep and go over the top, and that would have been kind of the worst situation. So I'm really happy that Love's to play. So that's where I kind of look at it. But the keys are going to be on offense. The offense has to get going in this game, and it's a prime opportunity for them to do it. Yes, they have some good players on that Pittsburgh defense, but honestly, at the end of the day, I think Seattle's got enough playmakers on offense to really kind of set the tone in some respects. Let's see. I love this from Paulie. If we don't run some play action, I'm going to lose my shit. I will be right there with you, sir. I will absolutely be in the same boat that you are and be throwing shit at the TV as well. Scott, that play call with Miller was ridiculous. Yeah. You know, WD4, Clint thought he was cooking. Yeah, until he burnt what was ever in the pot on the stove there when he did that play. That definitely came out as charred something or other. Johnny, you think too much pressure on our game one at home, Niners, new QB, OC Cup. We gassed that game up. I know I did. I would say these are professionals. And they had an entire offseason, and you listen to the players talk post-game, John. They, knew the stake of this and how important this game was. And you got a new quarterback and a new OC and Cup and all these. Then you know what? If this was something they were tempted to be worried about a little bit, then they should have played those guys more in the preseason to get them more on the same page. I think in this game, what ended up happening was more of Clint Kubiak did not have a counterpunch to Robert Saleh knowing what he was going to do. That's where I lay a lot of the blame at the feet there of, Clint Kubiak, and in some respects at, Mike McDonald. Like, if you need to get on your headset as a coach and tell your OC, I don't know what you're thinking of doing, but it's not working, change this and get it going back in the way that we've determined that we want to be a physical running football team, get back into that groove, then you got to do that. And I think sometimes, like, I think Mike's an intense guy, but I still think because he's still year two of this, I think there was some, again, experienced OC now come in. Okay, you do your thing with the offense, and I'm kind of focus on the defense here. And I think sometimes in the game, Mike gets too wrapped up in being the defensive coordinator still. And what I mean by that is he's still calling the plays. And so as a play caller, you're running through all those scenarios in your head. Well, as a head coach, and this is where I'll give Pete an immense amount of, credit. Pete was very good at understanding the flow of the game a lot of the time and understanding when things needed to, kind of who needed a nudge here and there. And because he wasn't the DC, he was able to kind of focus more on what was going on. And I'm not saying Mike doesn't, so don't take it that I'm saying Mike doesn't do that. But I think as a young coach, like, this is where he needs to start figuring out at some point in the season, does Durde start getting more of the play calling duties so Mike can start feeling the flow of the game more for the entirety of the game and not just the defensive side? Because I think he's in his bag when it comes to defense. Like, he knows what he's calling, where he's calling it, how he's doing it. But as a head coach, sometimes you need to go kick your OC in the ass a bit and be like, hey, figure this shit out. Like, we're not doing this anymore. And I've had that myself as a coach, where I've had my head coach who has come down the sideline to me and we've been struggling at a certain point and kind of give me a smack up the head, not literally, but metaphorically speaking, and be like, hey, Get back to what works. Get back to our stuff that we've been practicing over and over again in the summer and in training camp, and get back into that and go into that and then start building off of that. Because that's the thing I think that happened in this game was Clint got so worried that Robert Saleh was going to know what he did that he was so worried about coming up with kind of a completely out of the box, outside of what he normally does offense, that it threw the whole team out of whack on offense, because they're like, well, we're usually in 12. We're usually doing outside zone. We've established to run this way to build this play off this. And it was like, this went back to being a Rolodex where it felt like Clint, it was kind of like he got so deep into his chart that he forgot some of the basic base stuff that works and never went back to it. And that's where you sometimes need your head coach to kind of hit you and be like, hey, get back to the stuff that works, our bread and butter. Go back to that. We're not in a game where we're down 30 points. We're in a game that's one score. Get back to our stuff that works. The defense will take care of itself. Get back to stuff that works. At least that's my take on it. Oh, Hawks for life in here. McDonald was the maddest I've ever seen him. No reason we lost that game. I think we'll be more physical in this matchup and pressure Rodgers, who we know will fall apart if we get after him. Agreed, he will. On the fumble, did he have a man open? Seemed to have rather rocket really low. Oh, okay. Paulie, on that one, I think you're talking about the fumble at the end of the game. So he had two guys open. He had Ken Walker on the check down to his left side, but if he had actually, and I don't know if there was something that told Sam to go to his left initially because he didn't really look to his right on it. Cooper Kupp was running a backside digger in at about 8 to 7 yards, and he was wide open. If he had got it to Kupp would have scored. There was nobody around Cooper Kupp. It was the front side of that concept was so well called in that situation. And I guess there was something that just keyed Sam to go to his left and go to the check down. He wanted to get rid of that ball and get it out quick. If he had held it for like a half second more, maybe climbed in the pocket a little bit and was able to get that ball to Kupp, Kupp's probably scoring a touchdown. We're winning that football game. All right, Dan, we'll see you. Appreciate you for being in the chat, man. We'll see you hopefully on the Sunday night post-game show. Daddy Dennis, 1-0 Pete Carroll. Oh, my face hurts. Pete did a really good job. Pete's a culture builder, and that's what he does. He gets guys to buy in. Paulie, that's a great point. You know, if we had lost this game playing the style we had all wanted to play, I'd have been way more cool with it. Yeah. If we had lost this game running the ball, doing some of those things, and you know, you still lose it because, hey, you know what? It just didn't break in some points. Like, say, you know, we're up at the end in the last play of that game. Is that Reek touchdown to Tonges that it was? Like, okay, it happened, but we played offense the way we wanted to. I think you'd have less angry fans than what we had this past week, where it's like, okay, we had that, but we also had an offense that basically didn't deliver on what we had thought we were going to get. It was just, I think it just left a lot of anger in a lot of people and brought up a lot of sore wounds still from last year's season, where we thought we were getting this great offense, and it, you know, we were more worried about the defense. Defense balled out the second half, and our offense let us down. So I think it's opened a bunch of old wounds from last year. They're still pretty fresh. They just basically scabbed over and you ripped them back open. So I agree. Scott comes in with, I think Mike really needs to get his OC's headset for sure. I felt like he didn't do that last year either. Wish he would have fired Grubb over the bye week. So I'll tell you this. I know from my sources that after they had started to consider it during the bye week. After the Green Bay game, they almost did it. They almost fired Ryan Grubb after the Green Bay game. Mike was so hot and so furious that they almost fired him after the Green Bay game, but they just decided to ride out the season. But yeah, no, and that's what I mean. Like, that's where what you'll see is experienced head coaches, Andy Reid, Mike Holmgren when he coached, guys like that are able to, when they've done the coordinator gig for a while and been the head coach, they start to lean on other guys a little bit here and there. And you've seen with Andy Reid down in Kansas City, you know, Matt Nagy and the abundance of other guys that have come in and out of that system as OCs that have gone off and had success. Andy may still call the plays, but he kind of relies on the OCs to still do their job. And so that's where I'm wondering with Durday and Mike McDonald's relationship, how much is Durday still learning and Mike still like trying to coach him up as this is going on? So that's where it'll be interesting to see. I do predict next year that Durday will probably be the play caller on defense. But I just think at some points it hampers Mike McDonald's in-game decision-making or in-game, how should I put this? His in-game ability to affect the offense and kind of get in, to your point, the OC's headset and be like, hey, this is what they're doing on defense. This is what we should be doing on offense. Like, get to it. And Tom Brady actually was on Colin Cowherd and had a really interesting take on how he learned the game so well as a quarterback was having Bill Belichick teach him coverages when he was in his first couple of years at New England. It wasn't the offensive coaches. It was the defensive coach. It was Bill Belichick, teaching Tom Brady how coverages worked from a defensive perspective. And it's one thing I do with all my quarterbacks when they go back to their high schools and stuff and they start working with their teams. I tell them, sit in your defensive meetings every week, sit in your defensive meetings, because you will learn more about how defensive coaches think and how defenses think in attacking a quarterback by sitting in on your own team's meeting and get that understanding of, yeah, okay, it's great on offense, sitting in offense meeting. This is how we're going to attack the defense. Okay, but how's the defense thinking? How are they going to try and take those things away? When you start playing that game, you start playing the game faster as a quarterback. And sometimes that's where even a head coach needs to go to an OC and do the same thing. And the other thing I'll say is there was a really interesting point brought up. I can't remember if it was Brock Heward that brought it up, but someone brought it up about coaching staffs and how some coaching staffs week one of the season always struggle. And Bill Belichick was one of those staffs. If you think of New England teams, they weren't always great week one of the season or even week two, because they were such a film-based analytical staff. They did such a good job of breaking down film, tendencies, all those kind of things. That's where they got their information and were amazing at, dissecting that. And until they got that, they kind of struggled. There are other coaches, Pete Carroll being one of them, where they could thrive off of that week one because it's emotion and it's, we just got to hang in there. We just got to hang in there. It'll break our way. That's where you kind of saw, those coaches have success in week one. Pete did it again. They went in and they beat a team where Mike Vrabel is a more analytical style coach. Pete Carroll's more of a emotional, drive that, come together, we can do anything. And that can kind of help you early on when you don't have the film and all the tendency breakdowns yet. So that's just one thing to think about early on in the season. Mike's a very analytical guy. Oh, we got Skyrocket in here. Seahawks fan from the Philippines. Wow, appreciate you being in here, Skyrocket. Optimistic with our game against the Steelers. They'll probably figure out a way to handle business. Go Hawks. I sure hope so. Johnny goes, Coach Mike's eyes this week told me he will not make that mistake again. I think Mike's learning probably that was the last time. I think Mike's going to be a little bit more vocal now. It's bit him in the ass twice. I think this time he's going to be a little bit more vocal with it. All right. So as I promised, guys, the chat's been great. We're going to wrap this up here in the next, few minutes here. But again, I appreciate everybody being in the chat. It's awesome having you all in here. I love the back and forth and all the different questions and stuff. It, makes my job more fun doing this. I love talking with you guys, throughout the week in the comment section on the different videos. So as promised, my final drive, my score predictions for this game. So you guys can put yours in the chat. I'll bring some of them up. My score prediction for this Seahawks game is I've got Seattle winning 2017 to beat Pittsburgh. Like we've talked about, Seattle's got to lean on its defensive front to disrupt Aaron Rodgers' timing and keep the Steelers from finding rhythm. Offense, stronger commitment to the run. Use it to open up your play action, your bootlegs. That'll neutralize Watt and Highsmith off the edge. JSN should continue to be your vocal point in the passing game while your young tight ends and other receivers, start becoming reliable chain-moving options on third downs. And most importantly, Seattle has got to finish drives in the red zone. Turning opportunities into touchdown rather than settling for field goals will be a determining factor. So I've said it, 2017, I think Seattle gets back to 500, brings us up for a nice matchup at home versus the New Orleans Saints. Do we have anything else? Okay, so we got Pearson here with 24-16 Hawks. Love it. We've got Sean in here, 24-17 Hawks win. 23-13 Hawks from Pauly. 6 sacks. Okay, Pauly, I'm holding you to that, man. I would love to see 6 sacks, and I'd love to make Rodgers look old. We got Will in here, 27-17. Love it. Daddy Dennis, 27-24. Love all of this, guys. And you know what? Amy just put something. Oh, we got Blue Green Zone. Haven't seen you for a while. Great to have you in here. Congrats on your new channel. Go Hawks. Thank you so much. And as Amy just put in, guys, please like and subscribe. I am so close to 1,000. Once I get to 1,000, it helps with the YouTube algorithm. It helps get this channel out there more. So I really appreciate all your guys' support throughout that. And guys, keep the chat going. Keep the conversation going in the comments for these videos. Follow me on Twitter, the Seahawks Eye, as you can see down there. Excuse me. And let's get this back going in the right direction. Let's go into Pittsburgh. Let's go show everybody that week 1 was an anomaly. And let's go take care of business this Sunday versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. You guys can also see my Films Lab breakdown with Dan Viens, as it'll be posted tomorrow morning, and we talk about the entire passing game. And also check out my All 22 film breakdown with Coach DC from All 22 Films on Seattle's run game. It'll help set you guys up for where I think Seattle might be able to make some changes in this Pittsburgh game coming up. So outside of all that, guys, have a good Friday night, and I'll see you all Sunday night after a Seahawks victory over Pittsburgh. Have a good one. Go Hawks.